Hey folks, welcome to the Unsung Podcast. I'm Mark. That's Vicki.
Hi.
That's Chris.
I was slipped down the pecking order.
Thought I'd change it up, you know, keep you on toes.
I am fucking right up front. I'm full of beans.
Are you?
I'm over the moon.
What kind of beans?
Homemade baked beans, because I live in the West End and you can't eat Heinz out of tin anymore once you live in the West End of Glasgow.
A plastic bag, like a recycled plastic bag.
That's how I have my beans.
Yeah,
you just snip off the corner and then squeeze them into your mouth like icing sugar.
sounds about right.
Beans.
Beans.
We talk about
Beans keep
beans a
coming
lot.
up. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
They have to cut in that Kurt Cobain song.
I think you do, yeah. That should be our new theme music.
Yeah, totally. That's going to be the buzzer in some future round.
Yeah.
Do you think we'll ever replace the Nexus?
Maybe.
I was brainstorming that this week thinking, what could we fucking replace the Nexus with?
You've replaced Dave.
Can we get some gobby bird from North Lanarkshire to replace the Nexus as well?
I don't know, you get any pals?
Oh, that's touched a nerve there.
Yeah, well, let's just get all the hilarity out of the way, because today's episode is gonna bring us crashing down to earth.
God, I know.
That's true.
If anybody's pining for a ghostly apparition,
Should we put a trigger warning in this episode?
there's a lot of depression in this episode, and in this music. Not in us.
Not really discussed. It just makes you depressed.
Uh-huh.
It's very dour.
I forgot how dour it was actually.
So dour, good Scottish word for
Good
international
Scottish word,
listeners.
uh-huh.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's up there.
That's alongside Dreich, which is
Dreich, yeah,
personal
Dreich and
favourite,
dour. Aye.
Mhm.
Oh, you know what's a really good Scottish word? If I had said this in another episode, please stop me. But gloaming, the gloaming,
Yeah, the Twilight.
the gloaming, which is
Gloaming
that.
and the gloaming.
Yeah, like so
Mhm.
the gloaming is like Scottish twilight, right? Which is obviously when the sun's just about to go down, but it's distinctly Scottish because in Scotland you can very rarely see the sun before it goes down. So the gloaming is when the sky's already grey and kind of overcast, and then the sun starts to go down behind that, and it becomes this really dark grey and deep, moody, oppressive thing. So the gloaming. It's a good title for a film, isn't
Yeah.
it? Yeah. It's a spooky time, especially if you're driving up in the Highlands. The gloaming is a really overwhelmingly creepy time.
Witchy.
Yep. So, how's everybody?
I've got some chest pains here. Oh, sorry, I don't know. I'm getting old.
This album's bringing you right down.
Aye.
Fucking sucks.
God,
man.
what's wrong with us? Falling apart.
Yeah, falling apart, man. I've got a sore shoulder
Vitamin
Have
D.
you?
all the time.
I take vitamin D every day.
It's not the same.
It's not the same, is it?
It's the same as the actual.
It's not as the same
Definitely
as
not the same as the actual sun.
The actual
It's like when you get Iron Brew, and then when someone buys Iron Brew,
Yeah.
it's like the cheap crap, and you're like,
it's kind of peppery or something, that stuff.
Yeah.
It's
and you're
weird.
like, my body can't synthesise this Iron Brew the way it can synthesise proper Iron Brew. Iron Brew, by the way, folks, should be spelled IRNBRU.
I was going to say that.
No
'cause
other way.
people will be like, iron brew, yeah, that makes sense. If you're Scottish, it just spell like iron and brew. It's like, no, it's not. It's
No.
not how it's spelled. Do you know why iron brew was made? Actually, I only found this out last week.
In Scotland from girders,
Why it was made?
because it had too many girders.
Is it a bit Coca-Cola?
No, it was so you know the forge in Parkhead, right? That used to be an actual like steel forge, or an iron forge as well. And after every single shift, they used to go and get pished. So Bars was based in East End of Glasgow. And the guy that ran the forge basically said that I asked them if they could create a drink that they could drink after work as a libation that wouldn't get them pished. Thus, Iron Brew was born because they were an iron forge and it was brew. Pretty cool, right?
That's interesting.
That is interesting. That probably should have been slipped into Nexus somewhere.
Probably, yeah.
That's how we usually deal with facts.
Only time exclusively is in the next.
I do go about. I do hoard them.
There's a time and a place for facts.
Yeah.
It's at the end of the show.
It's at the end of the show when everybody's switched off.
Yeah.
Especially if it's a 2-hour episode about synthwave.
I don't think it was as bad as that though.
Maybe it's just because I had to edit it.
No, probably. I thought it was.
Is it the same song over and over and over again?
Right, so let's rip through the rest of this episode, please.
Yes.
We have some admin to take care of first.
Let's do it.
I want to welcome a new Patreon, Galen Cooper. Thanks for joining us, Galen. We appreciate you. And good pal, Siobhan Wilson.
Welcome to the fold.
Welcome,
getting all the good stuff.
G-bomb and S-bomb.
We also got some hot new arrivals for the Record Club,
We
both
sure did.
in digital and in vinyl format. Please consider joining the Record Club. There's some people having a really good time in it. Apologies, by the way, American Record Club members. We've been unable to ship your records because the Royal Mail had a shit fit for about 2 months. But apparently,
cyber incident.
yeah, but things are back on track, and so you'll be getting a double or maybe even a triple package.
Are things back on track with the Royal Mail if they got a paid award?
No, it was because there was a cyber incident. They were hacked at the start of January, and it fucked up international shipping.
Yep.
Oh, it was that, was it?
So,
it's not because of the strikes.
No, sadly. Oh, no, they're not saying that.
Industrial espionage notwithstanding.
It was Russia.
Yeah.
It was a big balloon over America. It's full of letters.
Vinyl. Loads of vinyl.
So consider joining the Record Club.
Yes.
We've got a lot of really, really good records. We bought them off the artists and the labels, so the money went straight to them. It helps us get the word out. They're mostly quite limited edition, and we've curated them. You can pick what host, or you can take potluck, but you'll get some really, really good music sent out to you, and it'll be accompanied by digital as well. To learn more about the Record Club, Mark, where did they go?
Patreon.com/unsungpods.
Unsung Pod. And it'll all be explained to you there. You can join the top tier, which is analog, where you get vinyl and digital. You can join the digital tier, where you just get digital, or you can just come in as a basic member, the way some of these folks that we've mentioned recently have, in which case they get access to all of the bonus content. They get the odd perk, and they also get to join the AAA Unsung group on Facebook, if they have a Facebook, which is where it's all going down. Socials have been pretty lively recently, haven't they, Vicky?
Yeah, they have. I think it's because we've been doing really interesting episodes, though.
Some good memes and gifs going on as well. Right, but all that hilarity out the road, let's lower the tone a bit. Let's dim the lights, light a few candles.
Let's lumber.
Yeah, like get dressed all in black.
Open up the windows and let the hair come in.
Get the theremin out.
What are we doing?
The water phone. I found out what a water phone was this
really?
week.
I don't know what that is. Are you going to save this to the Nexus?
It's not. No, it's not in the Nexus. A water phone's this weird instrument, and I don't know quite what it is because I tend to skim read things on the internet.
Only facts in the Nexus.
But it's like a thing that, right, I'll describe what it looks like. It's circular like that, and it's got pins.
Circular like that, so that the listeners are having a great time with that.
They can imagine my hands moving in a circular motion, right? I'm
I don't
sure.
even know what you look like, Vicky.
I'm sure. I know, exactly. So circular like a disc, and it's got pins going up around the disc like that, and then with a bow I think it might have you put a bit of water in the middle as well, and then with a bow you kind of play the pins and it makes it a weird noise.
Does that kind of work in the same way as like if you run your finger around like a glass when it's got water in it? It's
You
like,
can kind of bow anything, well, certainly things that are metal. So people bow cymbals, they bow saws, as we're about to find out, and they bow water phones.
You can put a little sample of a water phone in here.
Oh, can I?
Yes.
Right, I'll go and get that, will I?
Happy birthday.
Louise, you must have one in the studio, surely.
Right. So, Vicky,
Yes.
how did you get to a water phone? What subject were you researching?
Well, as we announced on the show last week, we are doing the album 3 by Black Heart Procession.
So it's the word three. They wanted to specify that apparently by the Black Heart Procession.
3, and it's also the third album.
It is. The Black Heart Procession, a band I only know about via yourself. You introduced me to them via the album that came after this, I believe. How did you find out about them?
It was because I believe my pal put a song off Amore del Tropico on a mixtape for me probably about 20 years ago, and I just totally fell in love with the whole vibe. In fact, I did kind of wrestle a wee bit about whether to do Amore del Tropico or 3, but I decided to go for 3 in the end, and I'll tell you later why.
Yeah, I was going to say, 'cause I always associate Black Heart Procession and yourself with Amore del Tropico.
Yeah, and I think, see, personally, in my heart of hearts, that probably is my personal favourite.
Mm-hmm.
But I've went for the greater good with my decision.
Right, okay, you think this one's got a better chance. Okay.
Okay, interesting.
Mark, before I actually go into the backstory, have you heard of them?
Never.
Okay,
no
didn't
idea.
think you would. And I'll be honest, I didn't think you were going to have a very good time with this one, but I didn't care. Is that bad?
Very bad, yeah.
Okay, so the band, the Black Heart Procession.
I'm going to put tax on your cereal in 5 years.
They're from San Diego. Santiago, Wales vagina.
Yes.
The core members are Pall Jenkins, Pall Jenkins. I'm not going to say Pal,
like a pallbearer.
Like a
pallbearer, yeah. Paul Jenkins and Tobias Nathaniel. They founded it. They were also, or they are also, both members of a band called 3 Mile Pilot that we'll talk about in a second. The Black Heart Procession have featured a host of other members and performers over the years. I'm just going to pick one of them out, a guy called Mario Rubalcaba, who's a drummer and is also the drummer in Hot Snakes. Or at least he was a drummer in Hot Snakes since Odd in Progress, I think.
He was also in Rocket from the Crypt.
Ah, right, okay.
Right.
San Diego scene.
So, see that Hot Snakes, right? It only dawned on me in the past week. I can't remember what I was watching, and some American referred to their diarrhea as hot snakes, and I realised that's what hot snakes were.
I did not know that.
There you go.
Wow.
A
fact.
Yes. Isn't that amazing?
Holy shit, pardon them. Okay, that's amazing. Okay, so the band basically kind of stopped, and I thought they were done, but they then did a couple of shows in San Diego 2016, and then did the European tour in 2017. Jenkins in 2010 had commented that, quote, "After years of touring and travelling and focusing on music, we decided just to kind of put an end to it for a while." Pretty matter of fact. But no, they are back, and I think they are in some ways a going concern, even though they're not very active. They've not brought anything out in quite some time.
Have you seen them before?
Well, yes, but I'll have to qualify that because I thought I was going to go and see the full band. I went to the Arches in Glasgow.
I went to that show too.
And it was actually just a really stripped back session, but I think the 2 core members.
And that was quite a while ago now. It's probably about 13 years ago, but I don't know if I was distracted as well, but I think my impression of it was that they didn't really look like they were enjoying it.
Have you heard this music?
Yeah, I guess it kind of seems like it's on brand.
Yeah,
I know.
like, is anybody enjoying it? Yeah, so did I like that? There were certain tracks in that set that you could do pretty faithfully with just 2 members, but there were a lot of other tracks that you couldn't. So it was a bit too bare, and a lot of what they're about is the ambience, and you kind of lack that a wee bit when it was just sort of piano and guitar, or piano and
I felt that too.
Yeah, so I felt a wee bit shortchanged. I'm funny about stripped back sets anyway. Sometimes I feel like, I don't want to say a money grab when bands are touring, but I don't feel like it was properly expressed that it was a stripped back set. I remember going to that thinking I'm going to see the Black Heart Procession. I was like, what the fuck are the drums? But yeah, there you go. Maybe I'm just an idiot. But yeah, so they're still kind of going. As we mentioned, they come from a band called 3 Mile Pilot. Three Mile Pilot been going a fair bit longer. They began in like 1991, I think, and Black Heart Procession was really sort of a 3 Mile Pilot side project. I think originally Pall Jenkins was the one in 3 Mile Pilot. Tobias Nathaniel joined later, but he's still in it. The first release by 3 Mile Pilot, now I don't know how to pronounce it because I don't even know what language it is, but Navuka do Lupo, which I think is probably some variation on The Mouth of the Wolf, it sounds like. from 1992. And
sounds like it.
That album is just bass, vocals and drums. The band also features Zach Smith, and Zach's his abbreviated name. I can't remember his full name. It's maybe Andrew something.
Armistead Burwell Smith IV.
Right, okay. So Zach Smith will stick with, and Tom Zinser, who went on to form an excellent band called Pinback.
Might come into my Nexus later on, who knows.
Oh wow. Teaser. So they got picked up around 1993 in that big alt rock feeding frenzy, but I think it was Geffen they got picked up with, but they were also later dropped amidst problems delivering their album and disagreements. All three bands that we just mentioned, I believe, so 3 Mile Pilot, Black Heart Procession and Pinback, having some way followed a similar path, in that they originally worked with Touch and Go and then moved to work with Temporary Residence. So 3 Mile Pilot have done 4 albums in total. They actually had a 13-year gap in between the most recent one and the one prior. So the 1997 they did Another Desert, Another Sea, and then in 2010 I think it was The Inevitable Past Is a Future Forgotten.
Nothing since then.
They're not a band that I really
an EP and Maps
follow too much. We'll mention them a little bit. What do you make of 3 Mile Pilot? Can we just say they're not cheery either, but they're certainly a damn sight cheerier than Black Heart Procession. I kind of got that kind of American indie sort of almost like Built to Spill. The vocals were occasionally.
So when I was first into Black Heart Procession, and when I did get into them at the beginning, I was really into them for a couple of years, and then I found out about 3 Mile Pilot. So I had one of their EPs. I can't remember what it's called. If it's the word Tokyo Static comes to mind. I don't know if that's a song on the EP or that is the EP. And I liked it. I did enjoy that, but I never really listened to any more of it.
There's a lot of those. I'm saying Built to Spill, but it's maybe not a great example. But there's a lot of those kind of okay alt rock / American indie bands that are a little bit more minor key than a lot of them, because Paul's got a kind of quite a weak voice. That's kind of a feature as well, like by design. He sometimes borders on Billy Corgan. He doesn't go as high and as nasal as Billy Corgan, but there's some of that.
He sometimes borders on Adam Buxton when he does this singing voice. So years ago on the Adam and Joe podcast, Adam Buxton wrote a happy birthday song to replace the Happy Birthday, and the voice he uses for that is this weird Brian Wilson, like older Brian Wilson singing voice, as opposed to like young Brian Wilson. If you can get a sample of Adam Buxton singing that song.
You came out of a woman, or possibly a tube, and ever since that day you have survived. Well done. And now it's birthday time, happy present time. We got some cake and wine and cake and food. It's birthday.
That's sometimes what that guy out the Black Heart Procession sounds like. I'll send it to you in a link.
In places it reminded me a little bit of Neutral Milk Hotel.
But for now we are young, let us lay in the sun and count every beautiful thing we can see. Love to be in the arms of all I'm keeping here.
3 Mile Pilot specifically.
Black Heart, his voice specifically reminded me a little bit of Jeff Magnum's. I would say.
Okay, 3 Mile Pilot are, they're reasonably well thought of, but they, even just looking at their numbers and stuff, like Black Heart Procession significantly outgrew it. I think I would think that Pinback considerably outgrew 3 Mile Pilot as well.
Yeah, I read that they're out of those bands, they're considered the by far and away the most successful, apparently. Pinback.
I've never heard them.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe they were on a major label. Maybe that's why.
I would be surprised if I hadn't played them to you, but they're really good. So 3 Mile Pilot, they're alright, check them out if you want. I'll cut in some samples, but I find them I kind of pretty hit or miss. I can leave them. Black Heart Procession, on the other hand, I'm a really big fan of. It's not always easy.
No.
We take a wee journey through some of their back catalogue. I kind of want to preempt this with some observations that were made by Pitchfork, of all people. There's a quote in a review of one of the albums, I'm not entirely sure which one, but for most of their first decade, the Black Heart Procession followed one of the most satisfying creative curves imaginable. Every album brought something new to the band's sound and was better than the album before it. And Pitchfork highlights in particular Amore del Tropico and The Spell as significantly expanding the band's musical horizons and being just significant works in their catalogue. But then they also cite Six, the album that came after The Spell, the studio album that came after The Spell, as the first time they failed to develop their previous sound on a record. And, to speculate, it was after Six that the band sort of wrapped it up. At least, haven't released any studio albums since then. Maybe sensing the malaise. They were no longer really developing, that they were just sort of, in a holding pattern at that point.
When we did Queens of the Stone Age, you thought, I kind of disagreed, but you thought that there was a bell curve to Queens of the Stone Age. I think there certainly is with Black Heart Procession. Okay. For sure, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, I actually think that's a reasonable observation for the point of Pitchfork. I mean, they're saying that the early albums followed an upward trajectory, and I would agree that allowing for the fact that number one doesn't start all that high. Looking at those albums, the first thing they actually released was called a 3-song recording that came out in 1997, and honestly it's pretty average. The Saw features heavily on it. I don't know if it was just like a vessel for them to express some of these interesting instruments and something a bit more morose than they were doing at the time in 3 Mile Pilot. The second track in it, Destroying the City of Hearts, is this kind of brooding instrumental. A really nice distorted intro and some cool brassy synthy swells in it. It's good soundtrack music, but overall it's just an okay first re-release.
We probably haven't really said what kind of music it is, have we? Like, where would you put it, genre?
That's the thing, I don't know, and I kind of feel like we're going to have to edge our way towards some kind of definition, because I think as they bring in elements, the nature of how you would describe it kind of changes.
It does.
Yeah. The first album, One, in 1998, for me, not a bad record, just a bit tedious maybe. You should point out that 8 of the tracks feature the word heart in their title, which I think is something they do in a later album with the word love as well. This record has a lot of the same moods, a lot of the same ingredients that populate later albums, but I think it just assembles them in a less compelling way, and sometimes it's like tough chewing. You're listening to it and it's like, God, I'm really trying to get something out of this, but the third track, Release My Heart, is a decent moment. A wee bit isolated in there.
So the best chorus on that record, I think.
Okay. Well, I think the 5th track, Blue Water, Black Heart, is maybe the highlight for me, as it has a slightly more accessible approach. But it isn't strong enough on its own to compel many repeat listens, and given that I am a fan of the band, this is not an album that I've gone back to. I don't think I own this album actually.
No. As a first record, it's maybe just they're kind of forging their sound a wee bit. You definitely get that macabre kind of theatrical freak show thing from it that comes out quite a lot in their next couple of records as well.
Vaudeville.
That kind of vaudevillian, at times even kind of circusy type thing.
So there's like the first ingredient I think we have to mention, that there is, on top of that alt rock background that they came from with 3 Mile Pilot, this band starts to get, like you say, a little bit vaudevillian. It's odd. It's got a kind of cabaret retro quality to it in places. There's an obsession with the sea and water and darkness, obviously, and heart and love, and then there's something distinct starting to take shape, but it's not quite realised.
And when I was listening back as well, I was trying to think about where this would sit musically with contemporaries at the time. So this was 1998, so right about that time, either side, 97, 98, 99, you'd have like Blonde Redhead released their 4th album, I think. Tindersticks, Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds were releasing stuff, and Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, there's a big element of that, I think, in Black Heart Procession.
That is one of the closest I can, and I think Tindersticks is really relevant.
If my hand by my side, thy void is there, this last affair.
Blonde Redhead, I'm not sure. They went from doing that almost like fugazi, oddball bits of Sonic Youth, and then they kind of leapfrogged over to synthy stuff. Like they never quite got as morose as this.
Probably not. Low. I think there's a bit of low in Black
there's a lot of
Procession
slowcore
as well.
Yeah, just slowcore, codeine, stuff like that.
So codeine, stuff like that. Yeah.
I think for me it was a really bad start. First record I listened to in the car on the way home after last week's episode.
Yeah,
and I was like, nah. Throughout the whole catalogue, they've got an obsession with that lumbering sort of shuffle beat that they do a lot.
Yeah,
it's like a procession. It totally fits with the music and I guess the overall theme of the band. So I was like, oh no, we're going to have a bad time.
Because see, if you hear the title of Black Heart Procession, just screams emo to me. You're like that, oh, this is like something like My Chemical Romance type thing. Do you not think it has that kind of but it's not at all. But yeah, it isn't a great album to listen to. There's no brilliant songs on it.
That is a tough initiation, and it's a hell of a way to set up the week ahead.
Definitely. So I was not looking for, I actually put off listening to anything else for a couple of days, because I was like, I'm going to have to do this at some point, and then I was pleasantly surprised as well.
Yeah, well, fortunately, 2, the second album, funnily enough, which came out just the next year, 1999, is a big leap forward for me. I think it's a huge musical progression. I think it's certainly, it's got slightly better production.
This is the first one on Touch and Go.
Yeah, it incorporates many of the same tricks and ideas, but I think that's all undergirded by just far better songs. To pick out some of the highlights, I mean, obviously feel free to interject, but I think the second track, Blue Tears, is interesting. It's really built around this central accordion.
And it was my time spent with you before the war. And now these blue tears, they keep falling.
Which I think is kind of charming in and of itself. The vocal on it is, I mean, he is quite a weak singer, and that, as I said, is a feature of their music. It's deliberately weak and loose on this one in particular, and it works in a kind of lazy shanty fashion that they sometimes dabble with. Like they do involve a lot of kind of quasi shanty sort of stuff.
They do. Do you really think he's a weak singer?
I think so. I think he's got a very big voice. I think
it's a bit like Wayne Coyne or something like that. You know, he's got that kind of like kind of strangled kind of thing. But or the guy from Mercury Rev, he's another example. Like, that genre has a lot of singers like that, where it's a feature, not a bug. You know what I mean? That song, some of the lines, it was my time spent with you before the war. you know, for some reason, when that's set against an accordion, it doesn't immediately make you think of somewhere like Iraq. It's got a nostalgic retro quality to it, and that again becomes a bit of a feature. Like there's something quite post-war about their music, and they'll line these blue tears, and that one is accompanied by these really nice warm trumpets. It's a very simple touch, but really effective.
For me, I agree with you. It is a big leap forward. I think that whereas the first album doesn't really have any good songs on it, there are some really good songs in this. I think Your Church Is Red is a standout song on this.
That's a great song.
Change your head, 'cause that's your slave. Turn your head from beyond evil ways.
It's got some country vibes, which is not in the last record.
Yeah, totally pick up on that.
You know, it really confuses me as a songwriter, inverted commas. It's mainly just acoustic guitar and electric guitar. The electric guitar,
the whammy,
loads of
really,
whammy
really
on
cool,
it. Yeah,
man. I like that.
And it's got this really warm organ that lingers around in the background. But the actual structure and writing of the song is really unusual to me. It almost feels as though it was a bigger song with maybe bigger drums that were muted, and it was just left that way because it's slightly formless, yet it holds together really well. And in the end, the only percussion that's actually on it are these very sparse, muffled tub thumps that accent the end of each chorus. I mean, I love that tune. It's really sad, but it doesn't over-egg the pudding the way they sometimes do.
Church is red, blood flows black from your heart.
We have skipped by one that I really like the third one, A Light So Dim.
There are no trains that leave from the maze. Your only chance is a ship to escape. You'll be the light.
I would say that this track, it's imperfect. It's a less complex precursor to a far superior song that's going to appear on the next album, the main album that we're talking about. It spends a good 2 minutes getting going, which I think is a nice touch. The snare in it has this brilliant BPM matched decay effect as well, like an echo that works really well. It's patient, it's hypnotic, it's ominous, it's got this glockenspiel, it's got the bowed saw, which becomes a real feature. It's got bags of atmosphere, and it's got this funereal pace that makes it sound really mournful that I really like about it. What do you call it? The piano ascents that are in the background as well, along with that, you know, there's a backing vocal that he kind of wails, time is all we have, so take your time. I just think it's great writing in this song. I don't think it's perfect. I think they do it better later on, but I do think it's a really, really good sign of what was to come. And then Vicki, of course.
It's a crime I never told you about the diamonds in your eyes.
But maybe someday I will see, 'cause it was a crime. I never told you about the diamonds in your eyes.
Class song.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
the most streamed song.
Is it? I wonder if it was in something then.
It may have been,
after the fact, maybe, but it's a beautiful, it's a great title.
Awesome.
Like, I love the title alone. Absolute belter of a song. Big flavours of Nick Cave and that gothy cabaret sort of, like, you know, the honky tonky but dark honky tonky piano thing that they do. There's a lot of that on that. Lyre of Orpheus has stuff like that in it, you know.
It really reminded me in places of Magnolia Electric Company. The way the vocals delivered, his voice is not as good as Jason Molina's, not at all, but it was like a vaudeville version of that band to me, you know. And
funnily enough, that's what Spotify auto-played after the album finished.
That makes sense.
Yeah. It bounces along in this almost jaunty fashion, yet it drips with sort of minor key pessimism, which I think is a really interesting contrast.
Down by the old fire ring, you wouldn't hear the sound of my lips.
And it's a compelling marriage of negativity but buoyancy. Most streamed song, and unsurprisingly so for me. It's a really great way to intro the band to people. I've used it as a way to sort of like, check this group out, this is the tune.
I quite liked Outside the Glass, mostly for the production on it.
I could never understand your words. I never knew what you were trying to say.
It's got the electric piano and the vocal. It's got this kind of woozy, it's really effects laden, but then in places it comes in and it's like really upfront and dry. And I thought it was just a really clever way of, like, because they often do sparse songs where it's just like one or two instruments and a vocal, and they do it quite a lot in the first record, but they don't really vary it too much. Whereas they have the foresight to vary it in future records when they do that, and this is a good example of them doing that.
They really play up the Dark Carnival vibes on the record that they brought out after this. It's an EP called Fish the Holes on Frozen Lakes. Came out in 1999 as well. The first track in it, The Boy With No Tongue, and by the way, tongue is spelled Tonge everywhere that I looked it up, so I don't know if that's actually deliberate. Must be, I assume.
Maybe it's the boy with no tonge.
Tonge.
Whatever a tonge is.
I've not got a tonge, as far as I know.
You are a tonge.
I could have a tonge and not even know it. It's trumpet, accordion and saw plus snare drum, really sparse and very European sounding. You know, it just sounds very continental. The second track, Descent, Fish the Holes. I'm not really sure what the theme or concept is, but this one leans really into the cabaret vibe with this really pitch black piano work and muted trumpet. The drums are much fuller on it, and the saw kind of haunts around in the background. It's evocative stuff, albeit it's not exactly conventionally song based. If you're a fan of the band, though, it's quite a good release.
But see, you mentioned a wee minute ago, and when we were talking about the other album, the word formless. I think quite a lot of their stuff is, like, even when we got onto Amore del Tropico, it's quite difficult to single out songs as individual things. They're just more like episodes in one big thing.
Well, funnily enough, that's for a reason on that one.
Yeah,
we'll talk about that shortly. Yeah, 3, the one we're going to discuss in detail, came out in 2000, and then 2001, another release. I think it's only 2 tracks, Between the Machines. It's pretty textbook for them. The second track in it, After the Ladder, it's a totally decent Black Heart Procession track. I'm not sure why it doesn't feature on their Spotify or that. I don't think it, you know, with some of these kind of more obscure releases, you can sort of tell why they didn't want it on there, but with that one, I don't really get it.
I didn't listen to it, so I can't really offer a comment.
Well, there you go. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to track down. I think there's some uploads of it on YouTube from, you know, enthusiasts. 2002, this is the one that we need to talk about a bit.
Yeah.
This is the most interesting talking point here for me about this band, Amore del Tropico, which is their 4th album proper.
Yeah, this is the one that I mentioned before, that somebody had put the song Broken World onto a mixtape, and I was actually abroad at the time, and I think
you mean like a 1920s broad?
Yeah, I mean both of those things. Yes, I was abroad because
it's in keeping with the era that they kind of harken back to, isn't it?
Yeah, I did have a penchant for Bardot tops and tight skirts and stuff like that as well. So there you go.
You're a dame.
Exactly. And I think this is like one of the first albums that I bought online.
You say online, like, imagine that.
On the internet. And it got sent through the post to me.
Where did you get it from?
I didn't get it at a shop. I think I bought it directly from Touch and Go.
Oh, wow.
And it got sent abroad to me. I think it came from America.
See, that's that kind of like optimal point of internet shopping where you're actually now just giving money directly to the companies, and that's the dream right there. Didn't stay there very long, did it?
No, and I think it was quite dear, because remember, like, CDs used to be about £20 and things like that. So
it must be now 40. I don't know. I've bought one in years.
About 40 pence. So I did deliberate a bit about this. I think this might be my favourite Black Heart Procession, but I think it probably is their most critically revered album, and I think it's also an outlier of an album, right? So when you look at their catalogue as a whole, this one sticks out like a sore thumb, and I think I decided I was happy picking the other record, 3, because that is the best of the Black Heart Procession being the Black Heart Procession.
Yeah.
Whereas on this album, there's like the guy from Modest Mouse, there's all of these hundreds of other people in the band. I know there was a lot of change in the lineup over the years, but I feel like this is too much of an outlier, I think.
Oh, comfort, you come from far away. Oh, listen, don't ever betray what you feel.
So we should probably mention that this was the soundtrack to a film that they made.
Yeah.
So they
I
made
used
this
to have
really
it.
low budget little movie. What was the movie thing called? Was it called Amore?
It's called Amore del... Oh, no, was it
Tropics of Love? Yeah, it's called The Tropics of Love.
It was called The
Yeah,
Tropics of Love, yeah.
and it's this kind of, I mean, it's kind of naff.
It is.
It's a sort of quasi Agatha Christie style, you know, like Murder in the Orient Express,
Yeah.
The Mousetrap meets, like, it's not very fully realised. It's obviously been done on a shoestring, but
Yes.
I mean, it's charming. And
Yeah.
it's certainly, if you're a fan, I mean, as I was a fan of the band, it was interesting to watch.
Yeah, I remember the picture quality being quite poor.
Yeah. So it follows a kind of loose narrative of some kind of murder mystery.
It's the band members and things like that as well.
Yeah.
And are they like playing music in it? Are they like a house band in it or something? I can't remember. It's been years since
It's
I
been
saw
a
it.
while, yeah.
But yeah.
There's some kind of vague narrative and it unfolds and the music accompanies it, and so a lot of the tracks on this sort of correspond with the scenes of the film and where the film's going and stuff.
Yeah.
But I mean, the album exists quite comfortably in its own right, probably better in its own right actually.
The way it starts, the intros is like the start of a film, isn't it?
Yeah.
The very first track, it's like that dun 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 dun.
Yeah. Jazz hands.
Yeah.
So the second track in particular, Tropics of Love, brings together a side of the band that's kind of hinted at throughout many other parts of their catalogue, certainly up to this point. They have a strange fascination with some fairly kitsch and uncool genres and styles, I would say. There are dollops of the dreaded bossa nova. You know, the sound of people like, is it João Gilberto, people like that.
Você tem que devolver o que era meu, bem meu. Mande o meu retrato e ponha outro em seu lugar. Morrer um rei.
There's really super cheesy, like cruise boat music, you know, in here, which, to be honest, I would never dream of listening to that music in another context, and they've got a kind of fascination with that kind of thing.
Yeah, there's quite a few Latin beats.
Yeah, but it's like a particularly lame kind of Latin beat, you know what I mean? But it's deliberate. And another band that I'm guessing would enjoy, or maybe already do enjoy, this record is Nouvelle Vague. Do you know Nouvelle Vague?
16 years, started up a fight. But now I'm jaded. You're out of luck. I'm rolling down the stairs, too drunk to fuck.
It's a project, a French project that who basically take famous tracks and give them this weird retro treatment, often quite kitschy as well, and it kind of sandwiches them somewhere musically between like 1920s Chicago and 1970s like Puerto Rico or something like that. You know, they take all these, like, remember all the crap buttons on a Casio keyboard, you know, like salsa, bossa nova, merengue, all that kind of thing. They basically take a lot of these sounds and translate famous songs, famous pop hits and stuff like that into this format. Interesting aside, by the way, Olivier Libo, one of the guys behind Nouvelle Vague, has another project called Uncovered Queens of the Stone Age. And it's I'll use a quote here. It's a group featuring a collection of beautiful renditions of Queens of the Stone Age songs, all performed by female singers in a rich menagerie of styles.
She said I throw myself away. They're just photos after all.
Wow.
Yeah, he really loves taking tracks and just warping them and adapting them into totally different vocabularies musically. I've never really worked out quite how ironic or otherwise some of Amore del Tropico is, you know, especially sitting alongside the movie. The delivery of it is really good. It's really well realised. The performances are great. It sounds good. It maybe ranks actually as the best produced record overall. But without the same loyalty that you feel for it, Vicki, I never really fell in love with the songs in the same way. Tracks like Why I Stay, the fourth one, I kind of like it. I find it quite unspectacular.
Though we may come close, these things won't ever change.
Sympathy Crime, the eighth one, again is decent, has a bit more, you know, like angles on it, a bit sharper at the edges.
Your truth unfolds. You can.
But never really like reels me in with a hook. I think on the record, probably track 11, A Cry for Love, is the best song. With that sharp, soulful, stabbed string lead thing.
It's James Bondy, that.
Well, you know what it actually is? It reminds me of a harsher version of the track by Irma Thomas, Anyone Who Knows What Love Is, which was popularised for a lot of people by Black Mirror recently.
You can blame me, try to shame me.
You know, that kind of like very sort of the early 60s Motown or pre-Motowny soul thing, like bum, string strike. Bum.
It's got a kind of melodrama to it as well. Yeah, I think this album's totally about the vibe. It's an album like I listen to, I get carried away on. The songs, like as I said before, are just kind of episodes, and for me it's got a heavy Lynchian vibe to it. I think quite a lot of their stuff is quite David Lynchy. You know, it has that Roadhouse and Twin Peaks kind of sound.
But that's also partly because he's so fixated on the past. You know, he's so fixated on taking elements of like the 40s and 50s and dragging them into the context of the 1990s.
I think Broken World, probably because it's the first song that I've ever heard, is always going to be special to me, but it is one of my favourites. It's got these like weird bits in it. It sounds like when you get a comb or something and you
it's like a washboard.
Like a washboard thing. It's got that on it, and so it's very rich instrumentally, this album. I quite like Did You Wonder. I love the organ and the slide guitar on A Sign on the Road. The last 30 seconds of that song, the outro, where he's just repeating Nobody's Coming Home, has almost something of Radiohead about it for me. Then songs like Fingerprints, that's just Nick caving the bad seeds out his nut, but I really like this album and can happily listen to it from start to finish. There's maybe one or two songs that I kind of not really that interesting.
But see, I think the album's pretty overlong. I mean, it's 15, 16 tracks on this record. It's a wee bit draining for me, and I agree it's got a really strong identity as an album. It is an outlier, and it's an outlier in a really bold way.
It is, even down to the artwork is so different, because the artwork's colourful, and when you opened up the CD, the artwork was a big poster of like the cover of a guy.
Hated that.
A guy with an eye.
Like who ever put up those fucking posters? It'd be just all wee squares where it'd been folded. It was a fucking shit idea. I mean,
I'm saying nothing.
Not just with them, because then you had a CD tray with no cover on it, and you had a shitty poster that was all wee folded squares. Like, that was the worst fucking idea of the CD era.
I think this album, I like the cohesion of this album. It felt their most, focused. It also feels like the most songy record, even though it's a soundtrack. It feels like it's got the most amount of actual songs and not just wandering aside, which are fine. They're really good at that. Some of the lead guitars and some of the songs on this album, and the one we'll talk about in a second, the next one, reminded me of Queens of the Stonies quite a lot, just in the delivery, the way they kind of, just the way they come across. Not necessarily in the, obviously we discussed at length in the Queens of the Stonies episode, not in the scale that's used, because that's a specific scale that Josh Homme uses, but the delivery of them and the tone, I think, when Queens of the Stonies did do the kind of lo-fi tones that are on Lullaby to Paralyze, some of the lead guitars reminded me of that. But yeah, I mean, it is dramatic, this record, but not in the same way that their other stuff is dramatic. It is more cinematic and less vaudeville.
It's got female backing singers as well, like on the Tropics of Love. It's not like any other album that they've done. It's totally different.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, given that it was my first exposure to the band, you've got that natural bias where you often, if you end up loving a band, it's often the first one that you heard that you hang on to the most. This definitely hasn't done that for me. It was a gateway for me, but I left it quite far behind. Yeah, 2004, In the Fish Tank, number 11. For anyone that doesn't know, In the Fish Tank was a project, I think it was from the Netherlands, where when bands were passing through on tour, this group would arrange for them to go into the studio with other musicians and they would collaborate. So, that, for example, there's a really great one with Dirty 3 and Low.
I think we spoke about that on that episode, and there was another one. Another weird one, was it the Melvins maybe?
Could well be. I mean, this is 11 in a series, and I don't think this was the last one. There's quite a few. This one was Black Heart Procession and Solbakken, who were apparently a Frisian band. It was a West German language, which is common around northern Holland. Wow. It's actually like musically pretty consistent with Black Heart Procession in general. They seem to, I don't know too much about Solbakken otherwise, but Black Heart Procession seem to dominate. There's some really interesting raspy kind of naked strings make an appearance on it, and I would say the third track, Nervous Persian, as a result of that in particular, was a highlight for me. It's okay, it's not up there with the best from that series.
I agree.
2003, Hearts and Tanks. Sorry, this actually came before In the Fish Tank, I beg your pardon, but it's a weird and almost experimental release in places with a lot of synth and strange production. At times it sounds a bit like a bedroom version of some weird 80s movie soundtrack, and maybe this is why it's not on Spotify. The first track, for example, Radio, has these really roomy drums with this 80s feel, but then a dead loud C6 synth at the front of the mix. It's quite odd. Doesn't really fit with their other stuff. Again, it's not on Spotify. You can find it uploaded in places on YouTube, but it's not always very easy to locate. Yeah, it's okay. I'll cut some in. I want to spend a little bit of time on The Spell, the 2006 album that followed. So this is the fifth album by them. This is the first time that I was into the band and a record came out, and thus it was the first time I got that buzz. The guitars in this record are pretty prominent earlier on. Pitchfork also identified this as a wee bit of an outlier, and certainly a significant release in terms of how it developed their sound. The quasi-musical theme from Amore del Tropico is kind of gone. It's back to being, a record. It's still unerringly negative and miserablest, but it's slightly more conventional in delivery and musical arrangement, I would say. Some of the standout tracks, the third track on it, Not Just Words, is truly distinct in their catalogue for the sheer optimism and buoyancy of it.
Days feel off and pass away like souvenirs from a distant place. Postcards from your memory.
It's a really beautiful song that manages to stay just on their side of slightly downbeat, but has these huge dashes of optimism and positivity. I think it's a really lovely track. I really like it.
I just like an old bloodline or dividing wall that fell.
Yeah, when the spell came out, for me it was a bit of an anticlimax. I felt like it started really strong. I liked the first few tracks, and then I just feel like that loses some magic as it goes on. And when I listened to it again, I still felt that way.
From track 5, it starts to flag a bit. The fourth track on it, The Letter, I think is one of their most directly affecting songs, full stop. It's really sad.
That's really good.
Has a really strong thread, a simple human heartbreak running right through the central theme.
I carry this letter all through the winter in fear of what it might say.
It's their second most streamed song online, I think. There's some good lyrics as well. I carried this letter all through the winter for fear of what it might say. It's just really good, evoking these like sad images. Yeah, sad being the frequent word. The only other one than that I think it really deserves a mention though is track 11, To Bring You Back.
Every night it's the same. I wait for you.
This actually has the feel like this could almost have been on a Constellation record of sorts. It's big and slow and full of space, yet that space has always got a kind of fog of melancholy in it. Like there's a lot of resonance in this track, even though it's quite slow. It's carried by a slide guitar and this steady dragging tempo, and obviously lyrically is alluding to loss, and it's one that stayed with me. I don't think the album is amazing because, as you say, it really runs out of gas pretty early on, but there are some very, very good moments in it. Yeah, and I think the high points of this album are far more deserving of repeated listens for me than the high points of Amore del Tropico.
Interesting.
I do think it's definitely the most guitar and drum focused, you know, that in the mix anyway. They use quite a lot of legato and staccato guitars throughout it. Yeah, I think it's a pretty cool record. I really liked The Spell. I thought that was a cool track. I like that it kind of feels hypnotic almost. Who is it that sings the lower harmony, the lower backing vocal? Because whoever it is are prominent in this song. I don't think that's Paul, because it happens at the same time unless it's just recorded that way. But it's much, much deeper.
I think sometimes they might like layer the vocals. I think it might be him doing the bottom part and the top part.
It feels
sometimes.
like a much nicer register for him to sing in. It sounds like more comfortable for him. Anyway, if
is that because it's gloomy as fuck?
Yeah, if that is him. And then the fix is cool. It's got a nice cello part at the end, which reminded me of Cursive on the Ugly Organ.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's a nice little change up in their sound again, and it is cool to see that they keep trying to do different things.
Yeah, I mean, that's the point that Pitchfork made, that they're still trying to sort of grow musically at this point. The next record, I think, actually is technically the Waiter Chapters 1 to 8. It's an LP that came out in 2008, and I've not heard it. I'm going to go out on a limb here and guess that this is a collated set of the various Waiter tracks that are strewn across their catalogue, right from Waiter, you know, on the first record, none of which I really care about too much, if I'm being honest, but I think it's one for the completists. 2009 they brought out 6, and that one was really ultimately quite disappointing for me, because again, I'm waiting for its release, but it was nothing I hadn't heard them do before better.
It's a very atmospheric album, and it's got lots of what you expect from the Black Heart Procession, melodrama and misery and
it's
all the rest of it.
It's got a lot of style, not a lot of content, I think.
I don't know.
It gets off to a really interesting start. That When You Finish Me has strong flavours of Tom Waits. I mean, he's not got the the gruff voice of Tom Waits, but it's got a similar approach to it.
When you forgive me, when you want to hold me.
And it's promising, you know, it's really naked opening tune. It's this really effective bass that lurches in midway, followed by some synth swells. But I think that song is indicative of a problem at this point, because it's crying out for the release of a third chord change to nail the atmosphere.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of that where you're like, just push it on to something different,
Exactly.
and it doesn't, and then it just falls down.
Yeah,
You're like,
the change never comes. The song becomes quite frustrating as it feels a bit lazy and like a missed opportunity. And yeah, there's moments
like half an idea.
Aye. The fourth track in that, Rats, is also kind of distinctive. It's fairly raucous by their standards.
I can see the stars in the sky. The buildings reach too high. I can see.
It's quite Tom Waitsy as well.
Yeah, but it's also almost Crampsy, like a slower Cramps thing happening. It's got a garage aesthetic to the way it's recorded, but ultimately the tune underlying it's a bit shit.
Yeah, as it was going through, I thought, I'm getting really dragged down in the heavy, dark stuff. But then I think they are something that they do quite well. I think they must be aware of that, is that they'll follow like some of the really heavier songs, like Drugs, for example, on this album, with something a bit more playful. So after it was All My Steps.
All of my steps away, I try to cover my track.
They're reintroducing, or maybe not reintroducing, something they've always had, is what we spoke about earlier, was the kind of Latin thing. So there's a lot of tango in that, and then there's quite a few Spanish sounds in this album, but it veers into the terrain of being something that might appear on like an episode of Breaking Bad or something like that.
Yeah, at what point does that just become like a bit like, this is what I was saying about not knowing how ironic they're being. Like, I really don't like that music. I think that's fucking wash. It really is like being in a cruise ship for me. And to hear a band fold it into their stuff, it has to be done really well. Like, it has to really, really click and sound relevant rather than just sounding like goofy and like, oh, we've got an appreciation of a sort of, it just doesn't work for me. It really drags me out.
They do try to do some fuller sounding kind of rocking songs on this as well. Things like All My Steps, Suicide, Back to the Underground as well. Suicide.
Back to the Underground. Fuck me, man. These guys just can't get their heads up, can they?
You think they ran out of ideas as a band?
I think that they stopped soon after. I think that's basically what happened. Yeah, I mean, they brought out one more release. They brought out Blood Bunny Black Rabbit in 2010, which last pre-hiatus release. 3 original tracks and 5 remixes. The originals on it are really not bad.
They're okay. I listened to this one.
Yeah, Blank Page is almost like a krautrock song. It's mostly instrumental, really draws you along in this hooky groove. Devotion, the third track, this is going to sound so strange, right? But Devotion almost, and including in the title, has a weird Marilyn Manson Depeche Mode feel to it. I mean, despite being a lot more analog, and it's maybe a bit psyche as well. So it's okay, but then they stopped releasing records after that and didn't actually play again until 2016. So yeah, I do get the impression that they felt like they hit a bit of a wall creatively, and that was the general consensus surrounding 6, the album, was that they stopped innovating and pushing on. It's just like them being the caricature of them now.
I think it's just stop being fun for them.
Fuck me, that's twisted.
Yeah.
It's not an appropriate word for this.
But maybe fun is maybe they just they explored that as much as they wanted to, and that they'd got everything out of it that they wanted to get out of it.
I was going to, before we get into this, I was going to ask you a question. We all like miserable music, right? But what's the appeal of it? This part is particularly dark, right? And it's relentlessly so. There's very little let up, which I don't mind.
Because
I don't mind.
See when you're standing watching a cat drown in a wheelie bin, you've got to listen to something.
Some of it's beautiful. I think that's probably why people like sad things, because they're kind of beautiful.
I think people like to wallow.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, they do.
Yeah. And share
in misery.
Yeah.
And some people just like the genre of it, like
sad.
They just Yeah.
Genre.
Well,
Wouldn't be good if we just
thematically what we were talking about before, like unrequited love and misery and pain and rejection and all of that kind of stuff is something that are valid like emotions as well, and that's part of a genre. Like if it was people, no problem with watching films about that or reading books about it, why shouldn't there be music about it?
I agree. It's very goth, isn't it? They are a bit gothy, actually, I think.
Can we push for records stores to, instead of categorizing by like music genres like metal, punk, whatever, reggae, to start classifying by like mood?
Spotify already does that, mate.
Happy, angry,
cute meat cute. Meat cute, sorry.
Meat cute.
Cute meat.
Cute meat.
Please delete that. Meat cute.
So it'd be that would make for interesting, bedfellows. You would have Kylie Minogue's I Should Be So Lucky next to Party Cannon.
Yeah.
Next to Scooter, maybe.
Nah.
Yeah.
And where would Black Heart Procession be, like next to Evanescence?
No, they're
probably
too,
next to The Cure.
The Cure, yeah.
Aye, Evanescence are too gaumy.
No, but what's their theme?
Overwrought.
Anyway,
so
move on.
The moment in time when I think you probably rightly have identified that Black Heart Procession best honed their category, whatever that category may be, miserablest, morose, moribund, whatever, is the album 3, which came out in 2000. Let's talk about it a wee bit. I wanted to start by saying I love the cover.
Yeah, me too.
The cover art, the odd kind of screen print is, I think it's zebras and birds. Some of their cover art is great.
Yeah.
The Spell and 2, I think both also qualify as really interesting covers. And unsurprisingly, Black is a regular appearance.
I feel like 2 and 3 kind of are quite similar.
They are. It's sometimes hard to tell what came on what. It's a very consistent period for them, but whilst I think also they are progressing. It's 46 minutes, this record, which I think feels a good fit for them given the languid nature of the music that they're playing. The Pitchfork review for this album deserves a mention because it's pretty interesting. I don't know if you remember on the Pitchfork Effect mixtape we did, Mark. By the way, folks, go back and listen to that if you want a good time. There was a writer that David had mentioned who was famous for doing really unusual reviews, like going off on a wild tangent.
That's right. Is this the one where the guy was using like an AI generator or something like that, like an image generator? Yeah.
So for this album, he talks about he's programmed a computer program to summon up images that match the music, and then he talks about failed experiments using it with other records, and then it's like 3 or 4 paragraphs before he even talks about the record itself. Waterfront, which we'll talk about, for example, gets, quote, a silhouetted figure on the screen manoeuvred large slippery rocks, heavy rain obscured detail, even the time of day, and eventually concealed the man. When the clouds receded, only footprints in the mud remained. Not your typical Pitchfork review. The track on Ships of Gold ends with, quote, as the song slowly built up, the camera pulled back and rotated to show the back of a man as he walked towards a legion of ships. His pace picked up and he began running until he neared the shore, at which point it became clear that all the boats were sinking. It's actually fairly appropriate. Yeah,
and I'm pretty sure he mentioned one of the songs summoned a soldier and things like that. I thought it was quite apt.
Yeah, it's Pitchfork didn't always do its job very well, but it's definitely an interesting one. This is a deeply gloomy and pessimistic record, if you haven't already picked up on that, folks.
Plaintive.
But that is exactly why we're here. Like, if you're 3 albums into the Black Heart Procession and multiple EPs, and you turn your nose up at this for being a bit dismal, then
why are you listening?
You kind of deserve the disappointment you get. Yeah.
But I mean, I don't really think that you should have to justify this music. I mean, country music initially was all about that kind of stuff. Like, think about Hank Williams, I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry, and things like that. There's a lot of
and now it's
that
about
kind
getting
of
dick down in Dallas.
Yeah, exactly. We did discover that.
There's enough cheerful music out there, you know what I mean? There's a lot of upbeat, inane shit. There's songs about the green mossy hills of Ardnamurchan, and there's songs about big fat juicy butts, and there's songs about all kinds of cheerful subjects, so I'm told.
There's songs about pigeons.
Songs about pigeons, for fuck's sake. And
songs about dystopian futures.
I actually think pigeons are quite depressing, though, honestly. You ever stood and watched
songs about sexy fairies?
Yeah.
Pigeons are depressing.
Aye, they're fucking. They're fucking.
Do you feel sorry for them?
They're so mutilated and grotty.
I know, and all of that bread must be terrible for their insides. They do all these kind of terrible shits.
That's clearly the first thought. So, with that said, track one.
Like it must have terrible IBS.
And 1 foot.
Pigeons.
Aye,
One toe, just
missing
one toe.
fucking bits of their legs and shit. That's fucking awful.
That's terrible. I bet
You
it
never
was
looked at
seagulls.
pigeons.
You know that's fights with seagulls or something, isn't it?
It's because of like the people put up like the anti bird stuff.
Oh, those
So
bastards.
yeah,
Vicky, you need to go out and look at some pigeons. You need a dose of reality.
Just
You
go
should
to
be
George
listening
Square.
literally, go to George Square, look at the pigeons and listen to this fucking record. That's a dose of reality.
I'll do that.
So track 1, We Always Knew.
And on what you pray, you will lie with them, and of that we are sure. We are sure.
Gloomy, dark, he sounds sad about something. He always sounds sad about something.
Yeah.
The piano sounds sad about something. Even the fucking snare drum sounds sad about something. I'm not sure what they're sad about. I got so bummed out that I don't listen. And actually, Vicky, you can maybe tell us, because I like to think I'm a good listener. But what I'm worried about now is that when people are telling me sad things, I'm not actually listening. I'm just kind of like grooving out on the sadness, because I have no idea what this fucking song's about, and I've listened to it 100 times.
God, I can't even think about what the lyrics could be. The piano in this really reminds me of Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. And there's really weird, awkward brass that comes in like 3 times. And it's a bit like, you know that bit in Space Odyssey?
yeah.
Awkward brass.
Do you know what I'm talking about? No, it's more like a deep a tuba, like a tuba or something. Like there's a bit, there's a famous bit in Space Odyssey where it goes doom 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 doom. Brr. There's like a big noise in Space Odyssey, and this does that song.
Like it's walked into the wrong room.
This does the
Pretty much, yeah. It's like,
It just
why do you here?
exactly. It comes out of nowhere. It's like, no, you don't belong here. And
Sorry, that's from the other studio. Just fucking close the door, please.
I wonder if it's meant to be like, in songs in this later on, a lot of it evokes the sea and sounds of like sea, right? So I wonder if it's evocative of a horn blasting or something like
That's
that.
a good shout.
I don't know, but yeah.
Track 2, Guess I'll Forget You, kicks in, big drum fill, big fanfare. I'm just kidding.
I like the synth in this song. Try to bring it back on track here. It's wallow in the sadness for a second.
So I was trying to describe this one, and I'd written, it crawls into your bed so slowly that you don't fully wake up, and you spend a good 5 minutes wondering if it's a bad dream, but by then it's gone and you can still feel the cold fingers on your back.
Before I turn, there's just one last word then.
Can you stop using the AI, man?
I know. I know. I think this song is. This a song?
This a song? It's a me.
I think it needs a song.
I think
You need to stop getting Luigi to write your notes.
I know. I think this song is brilliant. I think it's beautiful. There's a beautiful trumpet that finishes the song, and there's a synth sound that makes it all sounds vaguely underwater. The synth sound in it is like bubbly or gurgly or something, and it just has that very dreamlike, watery feel to it, and
Yeah.
I think it's beautiful.
It's quite lo-fi feeling. The drum beat is quite trip-hop, I think, which is a totally weird reference to make with this band.
There's another song in this album that sounds like it's massive attack drums.
Yeah, this gave me kind of weirdly gave me Radiohead vibes. I don't know why, because they're also somber and morose, I guess.
Possibly, yeah.
But I mean, in places like in Amnesiac and Kid A and stuff, there are these
Yeah, that's
really
true.
downbeat tunes. Yeah.
And the trumpet is lovely when that comes in. It's a really great touch.
Nice.
Once Said at the Fire's the third track, not as immediately hellishly sad as some of the others, but it manages to lower the tone, but just the second chord about 15 seconds in.
Not to live a life like that. Down here on
It's a lovely song, actually. It's a less odious balance of sadness versus malevolence. The guitars, the interplay is beautiful, and actually I think the song stands as something of a reprieve. The vocals are a different matter, though. He's right at the bottom of his range. He sounds like he's hiding in a cupboard and singing to himself as he rocks back and forward.
It probably was.
It's so fucking grim, the vocal.
So there's 3 songs in this record where the acoustic guitar is front and centre, right? And each of those 3 songs have a completely different guitar that's used. The acoustic guitar sound in this particular song is what I think is the perfect acoustic guitar sound. That big dreadnought, the big thick body, and the it's kind of wide bodied. That's the guitar that I play because I love the fucking deep bassy sound. And later on the record used a parlour guitar, which is like much more closed in, and for me that just really makes this whole song, because it's like, from that, when I heard that sound, I was like, that's the guitar sound that I love. And I was like, I'm in straight away. And then his vocal is kind of boxy, and then when it goes up an octave and does its own thing, it's actually really cool.
Really nice.
There's also like this really nice lead guitar in the left channel, just way down in the corner almost, and it's just there, kind of alt country, kind of yawing away. Pretty cool.
See, so earlier on we mentioned that a lot of their songs are really sparse. They're not always all that sparse, but what they do is they mix certain things really low, so it's almost subliminal at times, that there'll be a synth or a piano or an organ or something like that happening, and you won't actually notice it until you maybe look at the list of credits and who played it and stuff like that. But yeah,
that's where I found out about the waterphone. I really like this song, but I do think the guitar line sounds a teensy bit like Under the Bridge by Red Hot Chili Peppers.
It does. You're right, it does.
It does.
I thought that as well.
I hate that song. Of it, and now the start of it.
Definitely ripped it off. And the 2 bands are so similar as well. The next one sounds a lot like Giveaway. So Waterfront, The Sinking Road, track 4. This is a morose classic. This tune is a masterpiece. I actually included this, Mark, if you remember, on our Panthemic playlist way back at peak COVID apocalypse worries, and that probably tells you a lot about it. Every instrument is brilliantly chosen and brilliantly produced in this. The standout for me is the bowed saw, which is utterly miserable and yet totally glorious, but the crunchy drums at the start deserve a mention because they do this really boxed in thing before they burst into full stereo life. Likewise, the reverberating simple guitar hook, the doomy piano, they all play an equally important part in creating this.
This is the song where I think the drums sound quite massive attacky, kind of. Again, when we were talking about sounds of the sea, the guitar is quite reminiscent of a whale sound, like a whale song kind of thing. So we've gone back to that watery seaside. I think some of the lyrics mention seaside in it as well. Obviously it's waterfront, so it
feels quite dystopian, doesn't it? But the prominent piano sound, the guitar tones and the drum tones are just give this song so much character. It's really gothic, I think.
It's Edgar Allan Poe kind of.
It does, I really like the lyrics. There's not a lot of lyrics in it, but I really like the ones that are there. This is a sinking anchor that we hold so dear, where you're worn out from the start, cut out and never replaced. I mean, it's kind of non-specific, but yet still really
Reminiscent.
quietly traumatic. You know what I mean? I think the song's crying out to feature in a brilliant movie. It's so evocative. Like his voice is at its optimum pitch. He nails the delivery between the wails and the kind of baritone assertions almost. It's sung, but it's kind of forcefully sung at points. There's also the dropouts build the tension brilliantly and provide these great payoffs because the song comes flooding back in under it. Even the protracted outro, it kind of keeps you trapped in that weird netherworld for as long as they possibly can. Honestly, I think it's the best moment in their career. There are other great songs, and there are cheerier songs and songs that are easier to listen to and they're more bite-sized, but this is just fucking spectacular. Love it. Till we have to say goodbye, the fifth track. Guess what? This isn't a cheery tune.
Mothers hold their sons, soon they will be men and have to say goodbye.
It doesn't smash you around the head with the misery the way some of the others do, though, or maybe more accurately smother you with like a wet pillow or something. It's deep and throaty, and it actually reminded me a lot of Leonard Cohen.
Definitely Leonard Cohen vibes. Yep.
Do we have to say goodbye? We'll never know this life till we have to say goodbye.
This is one of the songs I was talking about with the acoustic guitar changes. I think it's like a nylon string on this one.
All right, okay.
It's got that plasticky sound that nylon string tends to have.
That's interesting.
I thought the song was alright. The Leonard Cohen thing is probably why I thought it was alright, because I don't really get on too much with him. The croon is cool. Like I said, I think his voice feels more comfortable in that register. You know, obviously those singers will sing the way they think sounds best, but might not often.
But he doesn't always do that. He sometimes,
exactly.
He sings in a way that he knows sounds weak sometimes.
But it's like I think the thing I'm trying to illustrate when I say that is like a lot of singers will sing in a way that is maybe not comfortable for them, and it's not until you hear them sing in a register which is closer to their own talking voice sometimes that it actually sounds more comfortable. And I think his voice does sound more comfortable in this register, and I do prefer it like this, to be honest, because it just, I don't know, I find it difficult to hear a singer struggling at the very edge of their ability.
It definitely drags a lot of people out of it. I know that it can be divisive. Track 6, I Know Your Ways. Not a happy tune. It's a bit more immediate energy in the previous track, but let's be really clear, he is not happy. Again, I'm not sure what about. Just get the feeling he's got a beef with someone. Maybe they messed him around. Enough said.
Chris.
Yeah.
Is the next song a happy one?
Wait, I think the next one might be that. Oh no, it's not. It's called Never From This Heart, track 7.
But it is lovely.
There was never a sound.
I love this song. You know, weird because of last week's episode, the synths have a Vangelis quality to them.
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah.
And each press of them sounds like it's almost like a brief sunrise trying to happen, or maybe given that it's Black Heart Procession, maybe more like, you know, the last embers of sunset. It's built. The whole song's built around a warm central organ fuzz and another mournful piano, a slow, patient guitar arpeggio that weaves through it. Where it excels, and where I think we mentioned it actually about some other tracks elsewhere, is the brilliantly subtle release that you get from the chord change in the chorus that just opens up and gives his voice a whole new place to go into, because they just change that root note.
You go away. Return to the sea.
And that that melodic release is just fucking excellent, but it is not happy.
No.
This reminds me of something from in the airplane over the sea. I think it's because of the trumpet specifically, because I use a trumpet quite a lot on that record. I'm not a huge fan of Neutral Milk Hotel, and there's some songs on that record I think are okay, but I did get that kind of vibe from this, the kind of lo-fi thing as well. I like the way this is really stripped back, but in the last record and on this record they kind of tend to use acoustic guitar to do that, and this time they don't, and I think it's a really nice touch to go with a different instrument for something which is quite stripped back.
Yeah, and I love the lyrics as well, and the bit that's like, life won't let you go away, life won't let you go to waste. It's really lovely.
A Heart Like Mine, track 8. Actually, I kind of returned to their big band shanty vibe.
Sea shanty,
Yeah.
goth sea shanty, I've said, yeah.
Yeah, more talk of ships taking people away. It's gloomy, but it kind of sounds like he's had a few whiskies,
It's
so
like
there's a bit sass.
Cthulhu's singing a sea shanty.
Cthulhu sings.
I saw the ship approach to take her love away. Oh, please.
I mean, he
What would
does.
that sound like? Wow.
As he does, as we've mentioned elsewhere, he lets his vocal get kind of weak and get a bit out of control, but I think it's in a deliberate fashion to make it quite ragged. In effect, though, I do also think that this track's probably a slightly weaker equivalent of It's a Crime, I Never Told You About the Diamonds in Your Eyes, but it does work in terms of the pacing in particular on this record at this point. I
was going to say that this is one of the songs that reminds me of Magnolia Electric Company, just because of the lilt of it, the way it moves. Some of the songs on that album, that Songs of High album, have that kind of country-ish bounce almost. Bounce is not the right word to use, but you know what I mean, that kind of lilt, I guess, is the word. I already used that word. That is the word that I'm looking for.
Thirsty, Mark.
It's a totally tropical taste. There's a really cool bit of call and response when one of the vocals are submerged away back in the bottom right channel, which is really, really nice, and just a really, really clever production touch, I think.
Do you think people in other countries have lilt? I don't think they do.
We'll have it in Denmark and all that.
What is it again? Pineapple and lemon? Pineapple and what?
I thought it was just pineapple.
I think it's not just tropical, whatever that means. It's just tropical, I
Do you
think.
remember the song for the advert?
Is it racist?
No.
Is it
racist?
That's surprising, isn't it? No, it just went, lilt, it's a totally tropical taste.
Are you going to fucking tell me to cut this out? Because see, when you start singing and then after, like, Chris cut me singing out of that episode, like, well, stop fucking singing then and give me work to do. I think it's pineapple and lemon and lime or something, because it's quite
I think it's
sour.
just pineapple.
Yeah,
it's not just pineapple, hen.
7-Up's
We
lemon
just
and
call it
lime, and
pineapple.
Sprite's lemon and lime.
Aye, and lilt is like, can we just settle this, please? Orange and pineapple, maybe.
Maybe.
I think it could be that. I do have that theme song just lodged in my brain from being a child as well. It's always there somewhere rattling about.
I just seem to remember the marketing being like
pineapple and grapefruit.
Oh, see, that's sour.
Yeah, that's
fucking
a sour. Right,
yeah,
that's a sour.
Right. I'm glad. I'd like to.
That was sour.
Sour.
I like being proven right.
Yes.
Track 9. The War Is Over. Well, that sounds kind of optimistic, except to most folk,
it's no.
To most folk, that'd be good news, and we'll give them the benefit of the doubt. You know, maybe the war was tough. Many of them are.
Yeah, but it's got that feeling of the war's over because I can't be bothered fighting it. Don't want to fight anymore. Rather than the war is over. Yay!
I think he actually sort of like.
I think he sings it in quite a resigned way.
Well, I think he kind of pulls the carrot away, because what's clear is that it's not a ticker tape parade. There's no gratuitous sex with happy sailors. It's a moribund lament that kind of speculates on what might happen if the war is over, rather than it actually being over. When you listen to the lyrics, it's like, if the war is over, will you come back, or will you join me? Or, I mean, he fakes us out.
It's quite an understated song, isn't it? Do you know what it reminds me of? The song 8-Line Poem by David Bowie from Hunky Dory.
Of you, mobile spins to its collision. Che
got that kind of resigned feel to it.
Well, as much as it fucking pains me to use it as an example because it's the world's easiest musical example, it does have a Beatles-esque quality to the progression of the chords, albeit the Beatles on massive doses of ketamine.
Didn't John Lennon have a song called The War Is Over or Happy Christmas?
If you want it.
Oh yeah.
This guy wouldn't want it.
Yeah. It's the third different acoustic guitar sound that's been used, and it gives it a nice texture. It's quite hooky just by dint of repetition of the words, because it's not a catchy song, but I quite like that nice push and pull between different crescendo moments in it as well, which I quite liked.
On Ships of Gold, now I know what you're thinking, that they were going to finish with a big fucking banger, a big walloper of like happy hardcore or something.
That's Fields of Gold you're thinking of.
Aye, that's a big happy hardcore anthem, that one.
It is.
No, rather they finish on something that's pretty downbeat. This one kind of patiently builds up. It's this oppressive, cavernous thing built around a lot of drone. It actually kind of has the air of a kraut tune played at the wrong speed.
It's got a Portishead voice in it. There's like a
that's what that is,
Portisheady voice.
As the song goes on, the chord changes start to decay into real pessimism. Did you notice that? Like they start off it's quite straight song melodically, and then they start putting in more and more dissonant chords, so it actually gets worse. And you think back to that description by the Pitchfork journalist who described this song as being like someone running towards the sea because they think the ships have arrived, and then they get there and all the ships are actually sinking. So you kind of think that maybe the album's going to resolve on a relatively upbeat change, but instead it kind of pulls you further down into the water with the final act.
But I could quite like it as an end to an album. I think it's pretty good.
Yeah, it is, and it's 10 tracks. That I'm really into that, and 46 minutes for a band that takes its time in music. That's pretty decent. It's conservative, in conclusion, I think this is quite a dark record. I actually think this is quite a dark band. Not like doom metal dark though. It's important to say that they don't rely on the violence of volume.
Very gothic.
They don't rely on the violence of screams, and they don't even rely on the violence, like the audio violence of distortion. They prefer to remind you, I think, quite gently that life is short and brutish and we're ultimately all going to die alone. I really like it. Is this their best collection? Probably. Thematically, in terms of length, in terms of flow, does it contain their best songs? I would actually concede that for the large part, no, it doesn't. But yet it hangs together really, really well. There's a hell of a good Black Heart Procession playlist waiting to be made, and we will do exactly that. So whilst this album probably only has 2, maybe 3 of their best tracks, it's just a really nice overall package.
Yes, I would agree.
Vicki?
Yes, I would agree. Thank you. What do you think, Mark?
I was surprised by how much I managed to get on with this band, this album, and Tropico, the one afterwards.
Amore del Tropico.
Yeah. I think this is a good record. I think it should go in. The only negative point for me was the last song. I didn't enjoy it at all.
Oh, you didn't?
No, it's going to sound weird to say any of the album on a low note, but
oh my god, you are kidding.
I just didn't enjoy. I thought they could have done something a little more, just better. I think it was too long. I just didn't get my attention. But that aside, everything else that I quite enjoyed. Yeah, they're an interesting band, and I think that there's nobody that really quite sounds like them.
No.
Yeah, which is that I know of.
Do you think you could dance to this band?
I don't think anybody could dance to this band.
You certainly could dance to this band. Might not be a very spirited dance.
So see if we get
a dance with spirits possibly, but like
if we get ghosts. 3 new subs this week, we'll post up a video of one of us dancing to the Black Heart Procession.
You could slowly waltz with a ghost.
You could.
That's actually quite good.
Is it? Ghost, have you done that? Aye.
The ghost of a sailor.
Yes. It's very ghostly, haunted music, isn't it?
I'm glad we did it. It was a tough week of listening, albeit thankfully it's winter in Scotland and it's miserable anyway, so it's quite appropriate. But let's do something cheerful next, whatever that'll be. But for the moment, we are going to do a Nexus.
Yes.
A complicated series of connections between different things.
The Nexus this week is Emma Wiggle.
Don't stop moving, baby, wiggle, wiggle.
That's a cut out again.
That's kind of a theme, yeah. That's the bear with the worm hanging out his butt.
Yeah.
Okay, no, aka Emma Watkins. Can one of you guys explain who Emma Wiggle is?
Yeah, Vicki knows them quite well.
Yeah, I explained it last week. So the Wiggles are an Australian troupe of children's entertainers, yeah. So they started, I believe, probably in the early 90s, and it used to be 4 guys. But over time, those guys left and it evolved, and now there's girls, and you know, I don't know who's in it now, but I think there's only one original member that's still in it. And they do songs for kids, a bit like Mark said, like the Singing Kettle, but it's the Australian version of the Singing Kettle. And they've got a TV programme where they have small sketches, a vague kind of storyline intercut with wee songs that they do, traditional kind of like nursery rhymes and their own songs that they've made up.
I'm thinking Haggis Haggis.
What's that?
The Gaelic TV show.
Oh, that, remember
Dotterman
no.
as well, yeah.
Dotterman.
Gosh, my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay, so Emma Wiggle, who chose that?
It was Mr. Love.
Mr. Love.
Yeah.
Call it Dr. Love.
Yeah.
Greg Love, thanks for your suggestion, Greg.
Big G Love.
G love.
We're on the G spot.
I bet he loves this, but no one's ever commented on his name before.
He's probably not even noticed. You had a fucking hellish time trying to do this Nexus, didn't you?
Well, the problem was the problem was that I forgot to do it, which is becoming a common theme. I keep forgetting to do the Nexus. I don't know why. So it wasn't until I got in my car on the way over that I realised I hadn't done it, so I had to quickly cobble something together. But it was becoming that performance anxiety thing where it was starting to wreck my performance, and I couldn't make the link, but I got there in the end.
I just had this image in my head of you like shouting like Siri to like just like give commands to like Siri, who's Emma?
She wouldn't know, she wouldn't understand me either. Do you know what I mean? It would just be hellish.
Siri and Vicki have got a really dysfunctional relationship.
Oh, it's me and Alexa that have got a dysfunctional.
Is it Alexa?
Oh, she's an idiot. But
sort it out, Bezos, fuck's sake.
It's just silly that you can't say to Alexa something like, Alexa, I never want to hear X song, so please never play X song. She just goes like, I don't understand what you're talking about. It's like, why can't you do that? Why can't you like mute? Because if I say to her, play ABBA, what's the first song that she puts on? Dancing Queen. Do I want to hear Dancing Queen? No. Does anybody want to hear Dancing Queen? No. But I can't say I never ever want to hear Dancing Queen.
And yet that's why Terminator's never going to happen, so be cheerful.
Okay.
For now.
Yes, okay.
Well, your experience today trying to get fucking chat GPT to do your fucking homework for you, that didn't go so well either, did it?
No, because I couldn't do it myself. It would take me so long. I was like, I'll go try a shortcut, and a shortcut took me longer than the fucking actually doing the thing.
It makes links, but it doesn't tell you why they're linked.
Then I just binned the whole thing and started from scratch anyway.
You heard it here first, the robots aren't coming.
They're not winning.
We're not worried about them. So Black Heart Procession released a few albums on Touch and Go Records. We mentioned that before. It's kind of a hip record label. It's got who are some Touch and Go artists. I think Shellac possibly.
I wouldn't put it past them, yeah. I mean, it's all that kind of noise rock thing, Chicago scene. And
also 33 are on the roster of Touch and Go. 33 features Warren Ellis, who is an Australian musician who's also in Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds.
Yes,
that's true.
In 1996, the Australian pop princess Kylie Minogue joined Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds on their ballad Where the Wild Roses Grow.
They call me the wild rose, but my name was Eliza Day. Why they call me that I do not know.
Actually, Nick Cave said that the Where the Wild Roses Grow was written very much with Kylie in mind. I'd wanted to write a song for Kylie for many years. I had a quiet obsession with her for about 6 years. I wrote several songs for her, none of which I felt was appropriate to give her. It was only when I wrote this song, which is a dialogue between a killer and his victim, that I thought, finally, I'd written the right song for Kylie to sing.
Very appropriate indeed.
Like, have you ever read any of Nick Cave's fiction?
No.
And is it The Assassination of Bunny Monroe or something like that it's called. The character in that is like constantly fixated on young pop stars that come on the radio and things like that and talking about their arses and all of that kind of thing. I'm pretty sure Kylie's one of them. Anyway, Kylie Minogue, as well as being a pint-sized pop princess, that's what like smash hits like to call her into, pint-sized pop princess.
We need to get you a better pop shield as well.
Too many peas.
Anyway, Kylie Minogue, as well as being a famous singer, she's been in movies as well. She was in Moulin Rouge. She has also appeared on TV shows like The Wiggles.
I thought you were going to say Neighbours.
Oh, yeah. Can I do that? She's also been on famous TV shows like Neighbours.
Was it Neighbours or Home and Away?
It was Neighbours. She was Charlene.
Oh yeah, because
she married Scott. Remember, who was Jason Donovan, who was her real life boyfriend. So as well as appearing on Neighbours, she's also been a guest star on The Wiggles, where she did a song called Monkey Man, I think it was called.
On my way to Bamboo Cross when I saw a monkey upon a white horse with rings on his
a song about Nick Cave. For years I've been quietly obsessed with Nick Cave, and I've written a number of songs that were not appropriate, but finally I wrote this song Monkey Man that I felt that's the one for Nick Cave.
Yeah. So something that's quite interesting, people that have appeared on The Wiggles, right? John Fogerty out of Creedence Clearwater Revival.
Yep.
Okay.
Lou Diamond Phillips.
Yep.
Okay.
Who's like the guy that was in La Bamba. Obviously, Australian people as well, like Steve Irwin.
Mm-hmm. All the Irwin family, all of them been on it.
And Rolf Harris.
Right. And also Keith Urban.
And Keith Urban too, yes.
Quite a big get that, isn't it?
Mark?
Okay, I'll go. So earlier on we're talking about the kind of side project of Pall Jenkins 3 Mile Pilot, and I mentioned that the bass player is it Zach Wilson, I can't remember his full name, Armistead Wilson the Fourth. He was also in that band. And like you also said, Chris, he was in a band called Pinback. That name for that band actually comes from the John Carpenter film Dark Star, which was his first ever film. It's a sci-fi comedy which follows the crew of a deteriorating starship 20 years into their mission of trying to destroy unstable planets. So John Carpenter was in a documentary last year called In Search of Tomorrow, which is a documentary about sci-fi films from the 80s, the biggest sci-fi films from the 80s, and he's there talking about it, and there's loads of other people, famous people and not so famous people, who were in some of these sci-fi films in the 80s. One of them includes the actress Joanne Samuel, who is Mel Gibson's wife in Mad Max.
Right.
In the original Mad Max?
Yeah, the original Mad Max.
The Sheila that gets killed.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. But she is also in the Wiggles movie, the first and only theatrical release to date, which was released in 1997. And Emma Wiggle was part of the Wiggles.
Alright. Black Heart Procession. Pall Jenkins played on J Mascis' album Several Shades of Why. He did vocals and piano on a thing called the Octagon, which I think we actually mentioned.
Sparkle Horse.
Was Mark Sparkle Horse? Right.
Yeah, Mark Linklis played it.
So the Mattel Octagon was a keyboard for amateur musicians and kids that used special pre-programmed discs to generate its tones. It's sort of similar to the Mellotron, but that used magnetic tape. The tones came from actual recorded instruments. They weren't synthesized sounds, and the discs could be swapped in and out, and some were part of like themed packs like The Joyous Sounds of Christmas and Country Style, which is definitely one we'd have got Mark for his birthday. It had some issues because I believe in very cold or very hot climates it could lead to the signals from tracks crossing over as the discs expanded and contracted. It was later revamped by Vaco synthesizers, which was set up by a former Moog engineer, for professional musicians, and it was sold as the Vaco Orchestron. In the process, Mattel, the toy company that had done the original Optigan, had sued a company called Chilton because a product called the Talent Maker was deemed to infringe on a bunch of the copyrights. And funnily enough, this is apparently what goes in the corporate world, they then used the Talent Maker designs for the updated versions of the Optigan. So the company that they sued for ripping them off, they nicked their designs because they were better and then used them to upgrade their instruments. So these instruments became really kitsch and appear on records by everyone from Crash Test Dummies to Marilyn Manson to Elvis Costello to Kraftwerk to Devo, Tom Waits, Them Crooked Vultures, and John Bryan used a Talent Maker to create the score for the film Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind by Michel Gondry. Aside, Michel Gondry's grandfather was actually a French inventor called Constant Martin. Constant Martin, by the way, which sounds like an early 2000s US sitcom along with like Malcolm in the Middle. We've had a bit of Constant Martin in our life, haven't we, Vicky?
Yeah.
He might even be listening. Anyway, so Constant Martin created various instruments, including the clavioline. He had a keyboard shop which also contained a Talent Maker, so it was a very nostalgic and fitting for Gondry to use it in that movie. Michel Gondry and the filmmaker Catherine Bigelow both took part in the creation of a series of films for the company AT&T, who used, I think it was the Golf Masters, to roll out some ambassadorial bullshit advert series trumpeting the company's core values. So there was one on gender equality called My Story, there was one on activism called Believe, there was even one on dangerous driving called It Can Wait. This is what fucking AT&T do to try and, launder their image. Catherine Bigelow, great film director, was actually played off the stage at the Oscars by a song called I Am Woman.
I am woman, hear me roar, in numbers too big to ignore, and I know too much to go back and pretend.
This was in 2010 after she'd picked up Best Director for The Hurt Locker. That song, I Am Woman, was originally by Helen Reddy, dubbed the Queen of 70s Pop by the Chicago Tribune, and became a popular feminist anthem over the years. And at the 2020 ARIA Music Awards, an ensemble of Australian women performed a version of the song in tribute to Helen Reddy, who had died just about a month prior. And one of that ensemble was Emma Wiggle, aka Emma Watkins.
Nice one.
Yeah. I am woman, hear me roar.
Is that how it goes?
Yes.
I was going to cut it in, but I didn't actually know it.
My mum had a Helen Reddy CD when we were growing up.
Can you fucking believe I call myself a feminist or feminist ally and I don't know the words to I Am Woman?
I know, exactly.
It's shocking. I don't know the dance moves to Wuthering Heights
so
either.
Basic.
I'm dropping the ball. It shouldn't even be a ball. I'm dropping the tit.
Yeah.
Dropping the egg.
Dropping the
egg. Mark, we don't know what we're going to do next week because we're kind of angling for something that might come off and it might not come off. So we're going to leave it a mystery, and we'll just basically pretend like we had it all planned all along when we come back next week. Yeah. So you will get us then. Are there any closing comments?
You'll get what you're given, right? And you'll like it.
This is where we brainstorm the replacement for the Nexus. We try out a couple of things. Anyone?
Aye.
Top 3 moments from the episode, Mark?
The happy song.
The happy song.
The happy song.
Vicky, top moment for the episode?
The happy song as well. What was your top moment?
My top moment from that episode was when you mentioned Rob Harris and tried to say it quietly. Like that made the child abuse let's say a problem.
Absolutely not. That is not what I meant.
Triggers are related to volume, and if you say something really bad really quietly, then people can only get slightly offended by it. It's fine.
Exactly.
Alright, catch us here next week.
Bye.
Bye.